Morning, folks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good.
Good morning. Welcome to the Planning and Economic Development Advisory Committee for the County of Frontenac on June the 25th, 10 o'clock. I'll begin this meeting by calling it to order. We begin this gathering by acknowledging and celebrating these traditional lands as a gathering place of the First Peoples and their ancestors who are entrusted to care for Mother Earth since time immemorial. We do so respecting both the land and the Indigenous peoples who continue to walk with us through the world. Today, the county is committed to working with Indigenous peoples and all residents to pursue a united path of reconciliation. Now, can I have a mover for the adoption of the agenda? Okay. Bill and Jim? Any additions required? All those in favor? Carried. We need to do a roll call. You already did. Okay, fine. And disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Being none. Okay. And the adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting, that the minutes of the Planning and Economic Development Advisory Committee meeting held March 26, 2026 be adopted. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Ed and Ray. Okay. Any additions, deletions? All those in favor? Carried. Deputations and presentations. I see Mr. Gallivan coming up to the podium. Just before that, I'd like to welcome Betty Hunter, and that is the newest member. And that from which township? North Frontenac. Okay, thank you very much. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. Okay, before I get into my briefing, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce to the committee our two summer interns who are here for the summer, Lauren and Donnan. Lauren is working on the planning side. Donnan's working on the economic development side. We always promise our students that you're going to come and work at Frontenac, you're going to see Frontenac, and they've been up and down everywhere already. And I hope you're both enjoying the year, and they're already contributing. So thanks for working for us this summer, and they've been done some incredible work already. Lauren, one of the reports on today's agenda is Lauren wrote, and some of the work we've done over in Wolf Island I'll speak to is certainly involved Donnan. So okay, and this is not, oh, there it is. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about our planning side first. A couple of the county projects, the natural heritage study, which I've spoke to you about. I want to let you know that the consultation dates have been delayed a little bit. They've been delayed because we wanted to make sure the consultants had some mapping done before they went out and talked to people, because people want to look at the maps and talk about what they mean versus the policy work. So they have reached out so far to township staff, to conservation authorities, to the NGOs like Nature Conservancy of Canada, and the Indigenous groups. They've already reached out to a number of them. And as a reminder, the firm we hired is an Indigenous owned company. So right now they're expecting to start to meet with them in about 2 weeks. And then we'll be out to the public probably in August or September. So stay tuned for that. Ontario Bill 98, which I won't get into right now, it is in effect. There is a report, as I mentioned, Lauren put it together with Sonia, and we can brief you about that later in the agenda. I can't, oh, sorry, the remote is off because I'm colorblind and I can't tell that. Okay. I hope I have a blue jacket on. Uh, so now I want to talk about an Ontario Land Tribunal hearing. So part of the work we do when we're working for the three townships and we're handling the planning files, or even at the county level, and plans of subdivision, which we're the approval authority. If any of those applications are approved or appealed to the tribunal, and the approval authority, whether it's a committee or township councils or county council, have endorsed our recommendation, taken our planning evidence and advice, we will go to the tribunal to defend that decision. It's part of what we do. It is, I've done a lot of them myself. It's not a lot of fun. You don't just show up and talk about whether this is good or bad. You have to be very well prepared. You get cross-examined, which can be very stressful. And the rule of thumb is for every day there's a hearing, there's 5 days of preparation. And in this case, this was a hearing on Long Lake. And this property owner had gone and built some things right close to the water without any building permits. And he was given a stop work order, told cease and desist. And he said, well, what are my options? He said, well, you can remove it all, or you can ask for minor variances to keep it. Well, it was Ms. Kapusta, Jenny Kapusta, and the township staff went on the site. It was just really, he'd torn up the shoreline. It's a long story. But to prepare for the hearing, not only did Ms. Kapusta do a number of property visits, but she and our GIS team and township staff got the fireboat from Central and drove all the way around Long Lake and shot every single property to show the tribunal from Toronto what the lake looked like and what the other cottagers had done to their properties. So that was in March, and we were successful, but I'd like to point out what the tribunal said. They found the expert opinion evidence of Ms. Kapusta persuasive. As I already said, she visited the property 3 times and toured the lake by boat in anticipation for the hearing. That's real preparation. Her degree of familiarity with the property and the township and county planning documents contrasts with the applicant's planner. So she was much better on the stand than the applicant's planner. And for this reason and the depth of her expert planning analysis and opinion, the tribunal finds that the minor variance fails to meet the test. So I'm bringing this to your attention because, first of all, thank you, Jenny. It was a lot of work, and she did an outstanding job, and that's part of what we do with our planning team. And Jenny is now a qualified planning expert at tribunals moving forward. So congratulations. A couple of events we've been to recently. First of all, the Ontario Professional Planners Institute put on a session about rural planning. It was held in the Sunbury Center on June the 15th. Sonia was one of the organizers. I think there was almost 90 planners all in one room. Yeah, it was really, nobody left. Usually you have these sessions and it's getting late in the afternoon. Some people leave. Nobody left. That was all of the sessions were very interesting if you were a rural planner there. All the topics were valuable. And we had some other involvements. So there's Mr. Kurliovich, Dmitry Kurliovich. He spoke about our community planning permit system project, which is quite innovative. He was also on a panel to talk about water standards and how you make sure there's good water for any new development. And then here's our group for communal services. So that included myself, 2 representatives from the utility, Tyler and Justin, as well as Christine from South, to talk about the South Frontenac official plan and its innovative policies for communal. And then Troy, who's the public works manager for South Frontenac, and who's also leading the Verona housing project, which is going to be built on communal services. So people really enjoyed that session as well. And then there was another session on June 16th held by our utility, Frontenac Municipal Services, at our auditorium. And it was geared towards all township staff. So we had planning assistants, chief building officials, CAOs, some of our municipal politicians were there as well. I think, Judy, you were in attendance. And it was a half-day session, again, very informative about what we're trying to do and where we're going with our communal services project. On the economic development side, just some things that the team has been doing, including, Richard was at a trail summit in June and he told me it was very informative, very, very helpful. Then Emma and Donna last Saturday were at the Lakes and Trails Festival in Verona with a stand set up. And then just a couple of reminders of things coming up. Frontenac County Business Networking is going to be held August the 12th at the Bell Rock Hall. And then on October 27th at the RKY camp is the annual county business retreat. If you've never attended, I highly recommend it. Really great conversations with the businesses. There's no PowerPoint presentations, but it's always very well received by our businesses. So mark those dates in your calendar.
Joe, I just want to mention that the 26th is the election day.
Yes. We knew that. I don't know, I think it was booking the place and everything. Yeah, it was the only day it was available, Fran. We had really no options.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. Then some other work. So there's Ontario Highlands is doing a tourism campaign and Charbot Lake video was in it, and 73,000 views, I'm told, is really, really good. So a lot of people are checking out Charbot Lake. And then the team's been working with both regional tourism offices on a whole bunch of tourism related issues. I can advise the committee, since we were able to have an additional community development officer, our ability to really do more tourism work is taking off. It's, you know, really we've got legs now because we now have 3 staff rather than 2, and that makes a big difference. So again, thank you for supporting that position. The council ultimately gave us a 3-year contract on, so. And then there was a business networking event. I'll have some images here in a second on Wolf Island, and then the Wolf Island business visit. So as I mentioned, Donan's over on Wolf Island every week, talking to the businesses both in the village and around the island. And then at the end of the day, he goes over to the Kingston Visitor Information Center and updates them on events that are happening on the island. So any tourist who walks into that office is going to have good information on what's happening on Wolf Island as well. And then on Monday, Donna was also over on Wolf Island with our GIS team, with our stereo camera, and they reshot the entire village of Marysville to go on Google Street View. We were concerned that the existing images were out of date. They were from 2013. So they shot all that and they did some other roads as well. So much appreciated. And that's going to be uploaded in the next week. And those are some images from the networking session on Wolf Island, which was a really successful day. And I heard the food was amazing. And then there's the Horns Ferry project. I'm sure you're all aware of that. Our economic development team was working with the township and also our American neighbors to find solutions to getting that ferry up and running. A lot of work Richard's been doing is working with Canada Border Services. That right now seems to be our biggest challenge. There's some images from the event of the day. The town of Cape Vincent and Jefferson County are all in on this proposal and are prepared to invest in this project as well. So we're keeping our fingers crossed, working with the township that this ferry will once again be running in a year or less from Horns Ferry Point on Wolf Island back over to Cape Vincent. And you may have heard the history of this ferry. It predates the American Civil War, predates our Confederation. So it's got a long, long history. And clicker no longer works, but that is the end of my presentation if you have any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, that particular ferry predates me. So we are all looking forward to seeing a business plan that the American side is paying for. And we've contributed to in that. I collected over 150 hard copies, as well as we had it on our website and that for surveying the population. So maybe by next year if we're lucky. And that, but that would, that's a double-edged sword from Wolf Island perspective, because as everybody knows, there's a challenge with capacity with getting people from the island to the mainland as it is. So in a way, it may be detrimental to us, and it also may help to make our case that, you know, this is an international connection that impacts Kingston and the other township areas, because it is a flow through of at least 60% of the population that comes off that ferry when it was running, and that flowed through to the mainland. So it was beneficial for everybody rather than dropping everybody at the end of the Ivy Lee. And far more scenic. Anyways, thank you very much, Mr. Galvin. Okay, now we have reports of planning and economic development from Richard Allen, providing municipal accommodation tax. Favorite topic.
We'll see if the clicker works for me. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee. I'm just here to provide you with an update on the municipal accommodation tax project. It's an update report. We don't have any significant recommendations about implementing a policy at this time. What we've discovered is that we need to do more work, and so I'm going to outline some of that work that we've done, and then outline some of the work that we anticipate doing, and some of the resources that we'd like to use to complete that work. So some of this will be a refresher. We haven't really talked about this since we introduced the idea about a year ago. And there's a number of considerations that have come up as part of the project. And so it's very complex, a lot of moving pieces. And so we want to make sure we move slowly and in a direction that makes sense for our community before we bring any form of recommendation forward to committee and council. In terms of the presentation, I'm going to discuss the work completed to date, as already said, the engagement results and research results that we've had, some of our preliminary accommodation revenue findings, an understanding of some of the key issues requiring further review, and then talk to you about the next steps. In terms of work completed to date, there we go. We did a number of public information project updates through Engage Frontenac. We engaged all of the township administration staff about what this might look like for them at this end. At the end of the day, if a MAT were to be implemented, it would be a township policy. It would not be a county policy. And so it's important that we understand what that means from that recommendation. We've hosted in-person and virtual engagement with residents, accommodation hosts from a few short-term rentals and other tourism businesses. We conducted an online survey and had one-on-one operator discussions with a number of businesses. We also reviewed some examples of the accommodation tax in other communities across Ontario and took a look at our inventory and started to review options for what they call an eligible tourism entity, and I'll dive into that in a future slide here. So did work before. It's not just you, Joe. Yeah. Thank you. Somebody's clicking off it. Oh yeah. I guess I got to go faster. All right, so it's like a 15-second slot per slide, I guess, is what I got here. Just in terms of this survey, we had it open for 8 weeks. We promoted it pretty significantly through our channels, through our township partner channels on social media. We got 38 responses to that survey. We did a virtual session online in November. We had 6 participants in that. We also promoted that pretty heavily as well. And then we did 4 in-person open houses, 1 in each township over the course of October 29th and 30th. 33 participants made it out to that across the entire county. And then we spoke one-on-one with a few businesses that requested these conversations, a number in North Frontenac, Central Frontenac, and on Frontenac Islands. What we heard from from these folks when we spoke with them, it was very wide spanning and sort of directed some of the work that we did after the engagement. A big challenge we recognized is that a lot of our public don't understand what an accommodation tax might be and how it might work. First they thought it was just an additional levy on accommodation businesses, and so we had to educate our accommodators that this is an additional levy to their guests that they then remit similar to GST to our to the municipality. They wanted to know, but there was comments out there that these would be charged on restaurant meals, that they would be charged on retail, and that residents would have to pay as well as visitors in terms of things. And so there's a bit of a misunderstanding about what and how the tax works, and we need to do some more education and communications to ensure that people understand what we're getting into with this. There was also a lot of concern about transparency. So what happens with these additional funds? Who oversees it? Will it actually be used to support tourism? How will their businesses that are, and how will their visitors benefit from the reinvestment of those funds? Those were all comments that we heard from our accommodation partners. And then there was also this idea of fairness. And when I talk about that, I mean between short-term rentals and traditional accommodation businesses. Traditional accommodation businesses tend to work with a health unit, have inspections, have commercial licenses, probably rezoned. They may have commercial septic systems, where a lot of our accommodations, as you'll see in Frontenac County, are short-term rentals, but they don't have the same, or it's felt that they don't have the same oversight over them in terms of operating a similar type of business. And so the concern was that short-term rentals would not be part of this program from traditional accommodators in terms of fairness. If there was also concern about maybe certain communities seeing the benefits of the accommodation tax and certain communities in Frontenac County not seeing those benefits. And there was concerns about administrative burden. As you, I'm sure, know, we don't have hotel chains here in Frontenac County. We have a lot of small businesses, whether it's a short-term rental or a traditional accommodation or a fishing resort on a lake. They're typically run by a family or a couple, and they want to make sure that if they're required to do this, that it's not drowning them in administration in order to do that, or giving them a lot of additional costs that they have to do to figure out things. And so that was a concern. And that was also a concern on the municipal side in terms of implementing and flowing these through. Finally, the industry indicated they want to be involved in the process. They want to be involved in decisions that are made with these funds if they were collected. They want to be involved in understanding how the programs are built, and they want to make sure that they have a voice at the table in terms of how tourism investment works. And so that's what we've heard so far. But as the previous slide shows, I do believe we didn't get a big enough sample size, and that we need to go back out and connect, especially one-on-one with our more traditional accommodators, but also make concerted outreach to connect with the significant portion of our short-term rental accommodations. We need to bring them into our business community, and because they're serving the guests that come to our region, and we should be connected to them. So looking at that, our accommodation market context, it has a pretty significant lean towards short-term rentals, with an estimated 428 operating. There's likely more, but these are the ones that were available to audit over online platforms such as Cottages in Canada, VRBO, or Airbnb. But we also have a few retreat centers, B&Bs, a couple. I think that hotel, motels, and inns is a little inflated, but they might have caught some of our lodges and resorts under there. And then what we don't know and have precise data on is the number of actual cabins or beds at the lodges and resorts. And so that might bring up the level of guests served by the lodges and resorts, part of our accommodation sector, to match or be close to the same as short-term rentals. We have a strong seasonality. I don't have a slide here, but basically we spike in late June and are near 75 to 80% of occupancy across all our accommodations, if not more, through July and August, and then we immediately drop off back down to 30%. And so that affects the occupancy, it affects the revenue, it affects operations. Most of our lodges and resorts, especially those in North Frontenac, are seasonal and are built to be seasonal. So they turn their water off in the winter. They're not a full year, where many of our short-term rentals are able to operate on a full year basis. So that's some context. The next slide here provides a bit of an analysis. So we were able to get the occupancy and average daily rates for our short-term rentals through an application called AirDNA. And our colleagues at the Ministry of Tourism provided us with these numbers, so we were able to kind of understand what the potential revenues might be for us and what that looks like. These numbers are actually very similar. So these are 2025 numbers, and these are very similar to the 2024 numbers. I think my total potential revenue estimate, gross revenue estimate for 2024 was 815,000 versus the 812 here. The occupancy and number of rentals and average daily rates do change, though, based year to year in significant ways, but it was interesting that they still kind of came out about the same. I want to provide the caveat that this is before any costs for the program are subtracted, and also these are like the 812 number is countywide, where the way the program would work is that 50% of each township's revenue would go to the township, and 50% would go to the proposed eligible tourism entity that moves forward. So looking at that, those share models are different in some municipalities. Some municipalities dedicate 70% to the eligible tourism entities, and or some 100%, depending on their interest in tourism. But most are the scenarios that we're looking at are follow what most do, which is 50% to the municipality and 50% to the tourism entity. But we don't totally understand, because these numbers don't include any of the lodges and resorts. Campgrounds are exempt, motels, inns, or B&Bs in terms of what might be able to contribute to that overall revenue picture. And we'd like to gather a more accurate picture before we were to make any recommendations going forward. This also only considers 100% compliance. So likely, if there was an implementation of a program and the mechanisms to enable that program, such as licensing or some sort of voluntary program or participatory program for short-term rentals, there'd be a change in the market. The number of rentals would shift, and the types of people who are doing those rentals would shift as well. We don't know what, but we have run scenarios at 70% as well, which offers up closer to $550,000 in gross revenue instead of the 800 that is here. Just making sure I have all of my pieces on here. Okay, next slide. So eligible, oh, that's the turn off slide. Okay, the next is the eligible tourism entity. So as I mentioned, we're required under the municipal accommodation tax framework, as the province allows us, to provide a share, at least 50% of the net proceeds, to an eligible tourism entity. What that is, it can be a number of things, but it must have a tourism-related mandate and use the funds provided for the purpose of tourism promotion and development. So many municipalities that we're aware of have those organizations. So for example, in Renfrew County, they have the Ottawa Valley Tourist Association. Not every municipality in Renfrew County has a MAP program in place, but Petawawa and Pembroke do. And so they contribute their share to the Ottawa Valley Tourist Association. And the Ottawa Valley Tourist Association is running programs for those communities on their behalf. We don't currently have a local countywide tourism organization. My department, the reason we're looking at this, in my department, the Economic Development Department, has been doing tourism and leading tourism for the last few years, since the Land O'Lakes Tourist Association closed its doors in, I think it was 2018. And that organization never served the islands anyways, and so it was not necessarily a countywide approach for collaboration. The county is not eligible, as far as I can tell. No one's tested this, but the county is not eligible to receive these funds because as a municipality, it's not an incorporated not-for-profit organization. The county could create, and in the next slide, I sort of describe this. We could create an organization to serve that purpose, such as Frontenac Tourism Corporation, that has a dedicated tourism mandate. It might be able to have geographic representation from across the county and be made up with a board that includes accommodation and tourism businesses to help guide the decisions made about those funds. In Haliburton County, they've pursued this approach, and it's a oversight board structure only. And the Economic Development and Tourism Department from Haliburton County makes a proposal for use of a share of the funds every year to that board, and then reports back to it from their budget. And so that's a potential way we could proceed, and we're looking at that. But there are other organizations that could receive the funds, and we could work with or partner with that already exist. And there are, and you don't necessarily have to give it to any one fund. So in Brockville, there are a number of recipients that receive a share of the MAP funds for the organization, including an MSC, as well as the what's it called? The Aquatarium. Yes. The Aquatarium served as the DMO, the Destination Marketing Organization, for Brockville for several years. So this is something that we think is worth looking into, because it retains sort of some connection to our municipalities that might be part of it. It could be represented based on who is participating in the MAT and who is not. We can sort of develop a structure that evolves as the organization or a program evolves as well. And so that way we can make sure we're working closely with our partners at the townships, as well as with our tourism industry when we set something up like this. It also could evolve to have its own staffing structure if the budget allows, or something to that extent. It's not necessary that we have to follow the Haliburton model. We can build a model that makes sense for us here in Frontenac County. The other piece is administration. So I mentioned before that that we heard from townships and from businesses that administration is a concern. The reporting and oversight that they already have is a lot. If we were to implement something like this, we would need to support the businesses in their approach to remitting their MAT, and B, make it straightforward and easy. And so there's been a number of elements in other municipalities that have worked towards this, including a platform that so that you can get a standalone platform where you log in, you input your occupancy and your rates, you get your report, and then you can submit either directly through that platform or to the municipality your remittance. And There are also organizations that work with you. So in several municipalities, the Ontario, it's called ORMA, the Ontario Restaurant Hotel and Motel Association. They have a platform and a whole arm of their organization that supports municipalities and businesses. And what they do is they take a small percentage of the overall revenues as part of their fee. There are some municipalities that just do it all in-house. There are some municipalities that work in a hybrid model where they just do the short-term rentals and the hotels and resorts are done elsewhere. And there are some municipalities where it's all farmed out to the third-party administration in some way, shape, or form. So there's a lot of options here, and there's a lot of complexity to explore, which is why we need more time to explore those options. There's actually a very new model coming out that might help support us. If we're looking at short-term rentals to be sort of the backbone of what a program might look like, we have to make sure that we build in something that is supportive and strengthens our relationship with the short-term rental hosts as well. The other part of that administrative approach is we need to know where and who our short-term rentals are. And so if we were to work with a third party, they would need a list of who to talk to. And generally those lists are generated through licensing programs that at this point. I don't know if there are other options. Licensing programs for short-term rentals are considered to be a very hot button issue. And I know that Township of North Frontenac is looking at it. I know that it's been looked at in this Township of South Frontenac at one point. They are, again, customized and no single fit across Ontario. There are very complex programs with a number of oversight associated with it. And there are more straightforward programs with less oversight, but still strong minimum standards. The case for licensing, from a visitor perspective, is that you're ensuring that these folks that are hosting your visitors have a safe place, that are, that they're doing the right things to preserve lake health and ensure the longevity of our tourism assets, which are our lakes, and that they have appropriate, they're meeting fire code and that sort of thing. That's tends to be the baseline. I think there's opportunity if from an economic development standpoint, if we know who these folks are, we can start working with them. We can start saying, what do you need for your guests? What is the way that we can make this program support you and how your guests are there? And again, there's a diversity of short-term rental operators who are either very connected to their guests and talk a lot, and some who are more absent and less concerned. These are all factors that we have to consider if we were to pursue a look at this. My recommendation is that we look at something that is aligned or similar across the county. But again, licensing is not something that we do at the county level. It's something that's delivered at the township level. So it would be something that we would work with hand in hand with the townships. So just to close up my presentation, and thanks for bearing with me. As I said, there's a lot of considerations here, and I just want to make sure the committee's informed. I've spoken with a number of different municipalities from across Ontario. They're listed here. They have a number of different reasons for engaging in municipal accommodation tax to support their local priorities. In the town of Blue Mountain, for example, a lot of the funds are actually used to offset over tourism that takes place in the summer. So additional bus services for seasonal workers, additional garbage collection, those types of programs. Those usually come from the municipal share and not from the marketing and promotion share of it. But it was something that the businesses and the downtown businesses and residents wanted to see happen, and they were able to incorporate that into it. In Petawawa, they just launched a tourism grant program to support the creation of new tourism events or support existing events, as well as a tourism product development grant where they use these funds through the Ottawa Valley Tourist Association. So they have a number of different pieces besides just marketing. Some of these funds get turned around and reinvested in the community. At one of our engagements in South Frontenac, somebody came up to me who owns two short-term rentals in Prince Edward County, and he said, I didn't like it, but then I started getting a lot more bookings in October because they've used these funds to attract new events in the shoulder season that would support us. And so he's like, I made more this weekend because of the county marathon than I would have made in all of October if that event didn't exist with the support of the mat. So that's where he started to see it coming around for him on a financial standpoint. And we suffer from that seasonality here, as I mentioned before. I'm not going to go through all of these pieces here, but you've got the slide if you have any questions about it. The funds, the municipal share and the tourism development share have been used for a number of different places to support community development as well as tourism development, and there's been a number of successes realized. MAT has been something that's only possible since 2017, so it's still a relatively new type of program in Ontario, and I think we're still seeing the growth and creativity about how it might be implemented. So just to quickly summarize some of the things that I may have hinted at not being resolved or didn't clearly say, I'm not asking for any implementation. No bylaws, no licensing programs today, nothing like that. What I'm looking for is time and some resources to continue this work. We want to have a stronger connection with industry to be able to move forward. If we don't have industry support, I don't think we'd have a successful program. So we need to make sure that we're connected to and understanding how a program can support industry before we can consider whether or not we should recommend to our partners at the townships to move forward with a program. We also need to update traditional accommodation, and that sort of comes from that operator outreach. When we talk to the operators about what a program looks like, we can also sort of understand what the nuances of their occupancy, their data to understand what potential revenue models might look like. We need to work towards understanding how administration might work in a preferred way. And as I suggested, I think we should look at creating an eligible tourism entity, or at least a business case that to present for approval, not necessarily saying we're going that direction, but it's just a little bit more background work that we can move on. We can, when a future committee and council considers this in 2027, they'll have the option to send us down any path that makes sense. We want to make sure we've done all of the background work if this is the direction we're going to go. And then, yeah, we need to continue to work with our partners at the townships around coordination and administration, and we're continuing to be there for them as we explore this idea. So the next steps are laid out here, and in the report. The recommendation is essentially to empower us to proceed with the following activities in terms of strengthening communications and outreach about what a MAT program might look like, how it works, and ensuring that we have not just a website, but handouts that we can give to accommodators that explain it, potentially their guests as well. We want to also understand. I didn't touch on this when we talked about what we heard, but one of the things that we heard when we were speaking with businesses is like, how important is tourism to our economy? How quantified is it? And I think it's a pretty significant part of our economy here in Frontenac County, and but we don't have anything that really clarifies that other than like an inventory of businesses and an understanding that we have a significant seasonal population that changes how our communities feel for a couple months of the year, and then we go back to a different kind of feeling for the rest of the year. So we'd like to pursue an economic impact analysis to sort of understand, like, if we're going to invest in tourism, we're investing in these economics associated with it. That's the most expensive thing I'm asking for in terms of what we're looking at, but we do need some funds to support printing and messaging for communications. We do need some funds to hire commission an economic impact report, and then we need less funds for reviewing the administration options, connecting with the businesses ourselves. We just need time for that, and developing a draft business plan for a tourism corporation. We've done a few MSCs ourselves here. There's a number of MSCs that have been made for tourism corporations already across Ontario. So there's lots of work that we can do internally with a little bit of legal review and consideration to go forward. And then we would come back when there's a new committee and a new council in the spring of next year to share our findings and probably provide some recommendations on what conversation should happen first. I think it's important that we might come back and say, we still need to keep moving slowly, but we need to move forward because we see the growth, or we might come back and say that it's just too hard to coordinate all of these moving pieces. But I think at this point, with the potential revenue that's out there, it's worth our time to continue to investigate. I'll take any questions at this point.
Okay, thank you for the report. And actually, the next piece that we have has the recommendations, and that's the more appropriate time for some of the questions.
Sounds great.
Okay, so thank you. And could I have a mover and a seconder for report number 2026-060, Planning and Economic Development Municipal Accommodation Tax Feasibility Update? Mover, Fred? Seconded, Leona? Okay, it's on the table. Now we can ask some questions and have discussions.
I have a question. Go ahead. After you, Jim.
Thanks, Fran. Richard, is it contingent that the licensing program has to be in place in order for Matt to be successful? I mean, that's kind of what I gathered out of this. Is that your opinion?
So that's what I understand as best practice. Basically, it's not contingent. It's something that you could do later, but if we want to include short-term rentals in a MAT program and we can decide to not, or then we need to understand who they are and where they are. And the mechanism that's been preferred by some of the third-party administrators is a license program that has a list, or and it's considered to be a best practice by some of the consultants and community talk to. How do you create an inventory of short-term rentals without a licensing program is the question that folks are asking, and we can explore.
Are any of the if I can, Madam Chair, are any of the municipalities considering the licensing program? I mean, we looked at this, I think, a year ago or a while ago anyway. Anybody jumped on board?
So it's my understanding that there's a committee exploring this in North Frontenac at the moment.
Okay, thanks.
Fran, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. I can tell you in Central Frontenac, we are not looking at licensing short-term rentals. It's a whole new unit of staff needed to do this job. And I'm a little concerned that we were talking about this again, and it had come to council, and I don't think any of the municipalities were jumping on the bandwagon of this tax, except maybe North Frontenac. And they're looking at, 50 units, where we're looking at 200-300 of them. It's not something that I, as mayor, which I won't be for long, there will be somebody new sitting in my spot, but the money that will be coming in for this will not compensate for the extra staff and work that this will create in a small municipality. That's my thoughts.
Okay, Fred?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about the pushback you might get from people that are renters. You're saying that you haven't reached out to all the people that you would have liked. Can you comment on that?
Yes, so when you mean renters, you mean visitors who are using short-term rentals or?
Yeah, that'd be visitors that they're getting an extra cost added and it's for the mat tax.
So yeah, so most, many municipalities in Ontario and beyond have a form of this fee in place. So it's not unusual across the industry. You see it in many communities across the states, as well as throughout some of the other provinces in Canada. They have a province-wide one in Nova Scotia, for example. There are concerns that it might this additional fee might make us less competitive with neighboring jurisdictions. But any other communities that have implemented it have not seen any decline in rentals as a result of it.
How can you find all of the short-term rentals, as many are done privately, hidden from Airbnb and Vrbo? There's many that just talk to their friends and their neighbors and their relatives and rent out that way. So how are you going to find them all?
Over time. But right, I think it'd be unrealistic to say we could start a program that finds every single one immediately, but we can do our best. We work with those who are there, and we eventually start to learn about those other ones that are out there. I'm sure that there will be somebody who has a brother that pays them some cash, and we never noticed and never heard about it ever. But those who are trying to run formal, more business-like operations, I think, are harder to hide under the radar because their neighbors will tell us, and we'll learn about it through other means as well. So I think it's possible to get close to 100%, but I don't think you'd ever reach exactly 100%.
Oh, Leona?
I just want to make a comment. I think it's a very progressive way of looking at economic development. So we can't ignore that short-term rentals are here and they're not going anywhere, whether we like them because they're our neighbor or we live beside them or whatever we don't like. So I think it's a great way to look at it. It's a lot of work you've got ahead of you still, but I think it's the right direction. I know the comment about renters adding another tax is kind of a common thing for people to be taxed these little bits along the way when you're traveling. To your point, you haven't seen anything that was negative in other municipalities. So yeah, I agree that there could be some there, but maybe what you've brought up that you've already noticed, it may not be a consideration. I just think it's very progressive thinking for development.
Just like to make another comment regarding what Betty was saying, like, if you find somebody like you're talking, Richard, about somebody that would be flying under the radar, and then all of a sudden you find out they're renting this thing, under what authority would you have to go to them to make them to pay this tax? You would have to have a bylaw in place, and they have to have a bylaw officer, and if they don't comply, then you have to take them to another level, maybe to a court or something like that. You know, it can escalate and cost a lot of money. And
yes, so and some of those administration costs, most of those would be covered through the fees of the licensing program and a portion of the mat tax. So there would be some piece of that to kind of cover or balance those costs. The other piece is and I think as I've been approaching this, I've been trying to think about how can the county or the Municipal Services Corporation share those costs. So like if a single person for Central Frontenac is too much to take on, is there is there a way that we can hire or bring in a different way to approach these types of things? So that's where the administrative evaluation approach is important here, because as the mayor of Central Frontenac, Fran, has mentioned, it would be a lot for any one municipality to take on by itself. And I think part of the reason, not just because it's our economy, and I see a benefit to supporting our tourism projects here in our economy, but I think that the county often finds a way to play a role to help shoulder a burden like that, and so we're looking for a solution that might work that way on everyone's behalf.
So what you're saying is that you'd go through an administration thing and collect the money through their taxes. And I myself don't agree that's the best way to go. I think, you're getting close to constitutional arguments regarding what's right and what's not right, to what level do you push that? And then I think that's a stumbling block you might come across over time.
If I may, I'm not proposing that at this stage. It is something that does exist in the bylaws of other organizations, other municipalities that do have a short-term rental licensing or a MAT tax if it's not collected. But in some areas, they don't have that as a provision. They take other methods to proceed with their collection purposes. The collection of the tax doesn't have to happen by the municipality. So, for example, in some jurisdictions, all of the collection is done by a third party through the Ontario Restaurants, Hotels, Motels Association. They do all of the collection. They remit to the municipality. They cover the administration cost. They remit to the municipality. Then they bill the municipality for their administration costs. They remit to the tourism entity, so that it's all taken care of. If there are flagged issues, then that have to be followed up on. The municipality has to take those on. So, like, if there are outstanding issues that letters aren't working from ORMA, they have to follow up on. So there's enforcement that could be additional costs, but some of the administration can be outsourced and is outsourced in a number of other municipalities. So it doesn't mean we have to build the capacity in-house to do it. And every bylaw that would be passed by every municipality would be ideally somewhat harmonized, but it would be the best bylaw for that municipality as well.
Okay. I've always been a big proponent for the MAT tax and that, because I go to the conferences and I listen to other mayors that have this already in place and how beneficial it has been for the support of tourism, as well as even emptying the porta potties and that the municipality puts up for tourists and that, and it's not always on the backs of the residents. And from a resident perspective, even within the past 2 weeks, I was brought out to a place that is beside a short-term rental, and the people going out on the private dock of the owner of their property and that, and making the point. So without having any licensing in place, it makes it very difficult for homeowners and cottage owners to enjoy their time when it can be rented to people with less responsibility. Whereas when you have a license in place, you can have 1 infraction, 2 infraction, 3rd infraction, you don't get your license back for 2 years. Have you got it straight now that you cannot disrupt the people that are paying their property taxes? Because you are actually running a business on a residential property. So there's a difference in taxation. But from a safety perspective in that, it was brought to my attention early on over on Howe Island alone, 38 short-term rentals that are going on there. That impacts not only the ferry, that impacts safety. They know that there's a less law enforcement on the islands, because as soon as a police officer comes to the island, word goes out fast. And on Wolf in particular, our ferry actually ties up at night. So there is an attraction and a risk that is very, very real. And we have volunteer fire departments, and my greatest fear is that sometime we're going to have a bunch of irresponsible people with a fire and we won't even have a head count, but I'll be the mayor wearing it. So I'm a big believer in this, because quite frankly, the residents have been paying the full shot and others have been getting away tax-free from it. And looking at even the trailers that are parked, I could probably get $100,000 in taxes alone by having $1,000 a season trailer tax. And that would be fair to the person that is living next door with 3 trailers parked on the neighboring empty lot, getting empty lot tax paid on it. And it's a business. So we have to get a handle on it. And I've been keenly aware of it from the island perspective because it impacts us, as I said, not only from the boat, but also from a fairness perspective in that, because we've got lots of roads and there's a lot of people that aren't paying their fair share. And that's not good neighbor policy. And when it comes around to trying to identify them, trust me, the neighbors that have been carrying the burden will be happy to identify any of the ones that are doing this. And if you have them that they, no penalty to get registered for the first 6 months or a year, but after that, if you're under the radar and you get caught, there's a problem. And that's, so I really see that this is the future. And I looked again, Nocway that passed this and they've gone through it through the legal process and it stands. I looked at Manitoulin that has licensing fees for trailers, $750 for the season. If you go to moose season, it's $1,000. That's additional tax money that the municipality gets to have. So I really look forward, and whether the county goes forward or not, it's part of what I've always put forward for our islands, because it would be good revenue and fair revenue. Anyways, but thank you very much. Now we'll have the resolution. We need to read the resolution there? Sure.
Through you, Chair, I'll read that there. So be it resolved that the Planning and Economic Development Advisory Committee receive report 2026-060 Municipal Accommodation Tax Feasibility Update. And further, that the committee recommends to County Council that staff be directed to continue the municipal accommodation tax feasibility review by undertaking the next phase of work outlined in report 2026-060. And further, that the committee recommends to County Council that up to $21,500 be allocated from the Community Development Reserve to support the next phase of work, including a tourism, economic impact, and seasonal analysis, continued project support, and the development of communication materials. And further, that staff report back to the Planning and Economic Development Advisory Committee in Q2 2027 with findings, opinions, and recommendations prior to any future decision regarding implementation.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. Now we have staff briefing by Richard Allen, Manager of Economic Development, provide a Planning and Economic Advisory Committee with a briefing of exploring trail-oriented accommodations.
So for this briefing, I'd like to invite our the committee hasn't really met Emma yet. So our new community development officer, Emma Stuckey, who is going to provide the briefing on my behalf.
Thanks, Richard. Hi, committee. Again, my name is Emma Stuckey. Great to be presenting to you today. I'd like to give an overview of an initiative we're looking to explore related to trail-oriented accommodations. So the county's been continued to invest in trails as a major economic driver that supports both local economic development and community vitality. Increasingly, our trails are not only recognized as local recreation assets, but also as part of broader regional tourism products. And that's seen through our role and involvement with the Eastern Ontario Rail Trail Loop. Oh. Oh, here we go. Maybe. There we go. Great. So I'm here today, we're looking to get the county's direction to explore policy and regulatory options that would support trail-oriented accommodations along the KMP Trail, Cataraqui Trail, and Tay Havelock Trail. This work is proposed in response to identified gaps in accommodations along our trail network, which is currently a barrier to attract multi-day trail users and their associated economic impacts to the county. So again, a lot of this work is coming from our involvement with the Eastern Ontario Rail Trail Loop. As part of this work, we're looking to support multi-day bike packing, longer stays within the county. So as part of that, there was a market readiness assessment completed, which really identifies ways that we can continue to support the trail investments with, again, the key goals here, supporting longer visitor stays, increasing spending in communities, and ensuring that there are filling in some of those gaps in services along the loop that will allow travelers, specifically bike packers, to come and stay and spend more time here in the county. So again, a lot of this work is coming from assessment completed by the Eastern Ontario Rail Trail Loop project. This market readiness assessment identified key challenges along the loop, that there's long stretches of trail with limited or no overnight accommodations. Pointing out here, the distance between Sharbert Lake to Smith Falls is 136 kilometers. This is beyond sort of a comfortable riding distance for a lot of travelers. And there are quite limited accommodations going north of Sharbert Lake to Calabogie. And again, looking to provide more options for travelers. So again, the intention of this work is to look to how we can support small scale accommodations in rural areas. Some of the solutions that the market readiness assessment recommends to be looked into is supporting private landowners and entrepreneurs in development of small scale trail oriented accommodations in the rural areas, engaging potential investors and operators to help increase the supply, and exploring partnerships with community facilities to provide basic overnight accommodations. So again, the intention of what we're looking to investigate is seeing how we can enable private landowners to provide small-scale trail-oriented accommodations to be able to advance our role within the Eastern Ontario Rail Trail Loop and ensure that the loop can support multi-day recreation and tourism product for bike packing, particularly the bike packing markets. So the assessment identifies some examples of what we're looking into. So here's what sort of we're talking about when we talk about rural small scale accommodations, dispersed camping platforms, primitive camping. You can see examples of those from the Sentier Micmac Trail in New Brunswick. So whether it be a tent platform, hut to hut style accommodation like the roofed as well, it was suggested we could explore explore community partnerships to like on the Camino de Santiago to provide options for groups to be accommodated in community halls, church groups, etc. Again, here is an example. Parks Canada was also brought out as an example of sort of the small scale accommodation options. So here's some examples of what we're talking about when we talk about dispersed camping, low impact rural camping options, things like tents, yurts, tent platforms. I'll go through. So this is the dispersed rural camping has been explored by other jurisdictions. California recently passed legislation that allows low impact camping on private land. And here as the state, they set baseline requirements that each county within the state can adopt. So they have set the maximum number of campsites on properties, minimum property size, maximum density, so total number of the number of campsites is limited depending on the size of the property, and limits the number of operational nights. And again, in California, each county must opt in before it takes effect locally. So all these examples are provided to show that a variety of low impact accommodation options are being explored in other jurisdictions, and provide an example on the types of options that we'd be exploring in Frontenac County. So next steps, if supported by the committee, we'd be conducting first a review of planning policies and zoning to confirm what's already permitted on lands adjacent to trails in terms of with that lens of a accommodation review. Review best practices from comparable jurisdictions, including assessing low impact rural appropriate options such as biking, camping, seasonal campgrounds, use of existing community spaces, second residential uses and the like. We'd be engaging with county staff, township staff, and agency partners such as the conservation authorities to ensure that any work we're doing would align with existing planning framework, environmental protection, and local servicing capacity. And we'd be looking to identify potential approaches for trail-oriented accommodations suitable for the Frontenac context. And we'd be looking to bring these findings back to PEDAC in spring of 2027. So just to summarize, the purpose of this work is to explore policy and regulatory options that would enable trail-oriented accommodations. It represents an opportunity to build on existing trail investments by supporting longer stays, increased visitor spending, and stronger connections between trail users and residents that own property along the trail, as well as our local communities. So thank you. Take any questions.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. And since we have a resolution after the fact, maybe we can do the same. And that, could we have a mover and a seconder to get the resolution for report 2026-061, Plan and Economic Development, exploring options of trail-oriented accommodations on the floor? Leona and Betty. Okay, thank you very much. Now, any questions? Betty?
I remember on CDAC, this was one of my things. Have we established washrooms along the trails that people can use? I mean, the accommodations are great, but washrooms are a necessity. Have we done anything about privies or anything along the trails that I've missed in the years that I've been gone?
Yep, through you, Madam Chair. My understanding is that there's been partnerships with the ATV Club, who provides a couple porta potties in key locations. Specifically related to this work, the need for like privy outhouse washroom servicing is what we'd be investigating. We obviously need to, or we'd be looking to ensure that any type of accommodation would be appropriately serviced, and that'd be part of our work to make sure that there is stays.
And following up, North Frontenac Parklands, we use Crown Land property and have camps set up on those with privies and that. Is it because it, like in North Frontenac, many other areas, is private property around that has the options. Is there any looking at expanding onto Crown lands for the camping and that type of thing that we already have established?
I'll take this one, Madam Chair, if that's okay. This program is oriented towards private landowners who are adjacent to the trail. We're not looking at expanding what public amenities we would provide. We're interested in providing an opportunity for neighbors of the trail to benefit financially from the trail through a provision of accommodations. And so we're not talking about Crown land growth or municipally run accommodations with this proposal.
Just to follow up, in several areas there are no private land around, so it's gonna could cause some difficulties, especially in North Frontenac, as we know.
Okay, Bill?
Yeah, could this tie in with the study that we're doing on the short-term rentals? Because I do know some people who have been successful in finding short-term rentals close to the bike trail and, you know, biking across to a nearby lake and renting a cottage and doing that to travel. I think there might be some potential overlap there. That's all I'm suggesting.
Yep, thank you. I think we've talked about that internally as well, that there is good sort of relationship and potential there. So part of our work would be we're looking at potentially adding additional options that more specific to sort of camping and bike packing, but definitely ties into the short-term rental, and depending on how investigations and goes on the mat tax could be related as well in the future.
Okay, Jim.
Yeah, the short-term rental companies don't seem to take that link and use it at all. I think there's an opportunity that everybody's missing out there. And maybe we have better information on short-term rentals, we could help do that.
Anyone else? Fran, I don't see you at all. She have a hand up? No? Okay, good. All right. So it's on the table. Any further discussion, and would you like to read it?
Through you, Chair, be it resolved that the Planning and Economic Development Committee recommends to County Council that Planning and Economic Development staff develop policy and regulatory options to support trail-oriented accommodation opportunities as described in Report 2026-061, and further that the committee recommends to Council that staff be authorized to work with the relevant township staff, committees, and councils to develop and implement these policies.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, now we have report 2026-62, Plan and Economic Development Trail Rehabilitation Phase 6B, Snow Road to Wilburn. And we're going to have Richard speak into that.
Sure, I can briefly speak to it. It's a report we just provided for information for the committee. We're currently working towards finalizing our RFP to put this project underway in the fall. And if you're not familiar, the Frontenac KMP Trail has been something that we've been developing from the southern border with Kingston towards the northern border with Lanark for the last 16, 17 years. And this project here would represent this substantial completion of that. There'd be a couple kilometers left to complete, but for the most part, we'll have rehabilitated the entire rail bed route over the course of that time, finalizing our work in North Frontenac. This is in the previous briefing provided by Community Development Officer Emma Stuckey. She mentioned the Eastern Ontario Rail Trail Loop and the assessment that was associated with it. A big barrier to the marketability of the Eastern Ontario Rail Trail Loop was the infrastructure gap in this section that was identified, and so this will be remove that gap. It won't remove the accommodation gap, but it will remove the ability for people to bike through without swimming from Snow Road Station to Calabogie. It's a pretty standard approach. We don't have complicated sections here. It's mostly all on the rail bed, and we're working closely with the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority, regardless of in terms of the land transfer, as well as in terms of ensuring that any permits that are required will be captured to move forward with this project. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions? Jim?
Just out of curiosity, Richard, is Renfrew County doing anything with their portion of the trail? Particularly from where Lanark ends right through to Renfrew, that whole section is not the best. It wasn't last time I was on it.
Yeah, I guess we haven't really reported to this committee, but we've reported to council in terms of the transfer of lands from the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority to Renfrew County, Lanark County, and Frontenac County. Currently, it has been signed off as of December of last year, and so that deal is moving forward, but the completion of it is not meant to take place until September now. And but what will happen in Renfrew and Lanark is they will enter into a lease to own or a lease agreement for any properties that they haven't finalized. And they're in Renfrew, unfortunately, it's sort of like there's no property information. Like there's no survey, there's no, the trail exists and other things exist, but there's not a lot of supporting data. So there's a lot of backtracking and administration that has to happen in order to transfer that. But as part of their lease agreement, they will start to make property improvements, and I know Lanark is planning to do the same. So you may see some of that work take place next year. Just Renfrew's really invested in trails. They have a trail staff. They've just bought 2 more rail trails, one that leads to Algonquin Park from near Pembroke. And so they're continuing to make these investments. The Algonquin Trail that they've been developing since 2021 is almost 600 kilometers long, and they're just stuck at a bridge that's cut them outside of Mattawa before they finalize that. They've knocked off several hundred kilometers just this year in terms of rehabilitation of trails. So when they want to, they will get trails rehabilitated, and so they are getting the hint that they need to get over onto the KMP from us and from the Loop partnership.
Fred?
The section up near Wilbur, has that been settled yet?
So there is a section that the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority has encountered a dispute with the neighboring landowner. As long as that dispute continues, the county will not procure those lands, and it will not develop those lands. But everything outside of that section, we will.
Okay, thank you for the report. We don't have to vote on that because it's just for information. Another one for information. Planning Economic Development, recent proposed legislative changes to the Planning Act. That was a thick read. And that, and what I would ask in that is if because there's been so much in the past 4 years with this government in new bills, is there any way that we could put together a template or a synopsis and that you can flip to and say, you know, Bill 98, Bill 101, you know, all these different bills, and then brass tacks of it, not only for the Economic Development Committee and that, but that could be shared then with council and everything else, because keeping up to what has gone on, you know, when you end up to the third building homes faster type of thing, it's getting a little on the confusing side, and which ones are filling the gaps and which ones are repealing other pieces. And I'm just wondering, from an economic development perspective, it would be a nice little manual for us to have so we could see what is within our control, what is beyond the control, what is being controlled by Toronto, and what is controlled by townships versus county. I think if we could get that, it would be helpful for not only volunteers on this committee and that, but also for councillors and mayors alike. Do you think we could get something like that put together?
Through you, Madam Chair, I can certainly check. I would first turn to the province and ask them if they have a synopsis. I'll be honest, I want to thank Lauren for her help on this, because if I hadn't have had the additional, I can barely keep up with what they're doing. The only thing that I'm glad about is they've decided to recess for 5 months for summer. So at least, well, I would love 5 months for summer as well. I'm at least happy that they're not going to pass anything else for the next 5 months. So, but I understand where you're coming from. There have been a lot of changes. It's a full-time job just keeping up with them. So I'll see what I can do. I think I would probably reach out to our regional MMAH office first, just to see if they already have some kind of, like you said, some kind of synopsis or resource. It is tough to keep up with them. There was a lot in this. Some of it is still proposed, but the one that was passed that has received royal assent on June 2nd this month is Bill 98, with, yes, another long title involving building homes and infrastructure and such things. But the biggest impact coming from that is there is now a standard template and framework for how all municipalities must do their official plans. Now, it doesn't apply to upper tiers. Apparently, we're going to get our own special change for that, to be determined, but at least not for another 5 months. And but this will impact any single tier or lower tier municipality. So it's something we're just being mindful of and turning our minds towards, because all of our townships are at different times within their lifespan of their official plans. So South Frontenac has just had theirs approved. So basically, they don't have to do this until the next time they do an update. And that could be anywhere from 5 to 10 years. And we might have a new government and this framework might not exist. Like we just don't know, right? So we're probably going to turn our attention to North Frontenac next, because next year their official plan turns 10 years old, which means we have to start having a look at it. But we'll work with the township staff and Lauren's here to help us as well. We might start having a peek at that to see how this impacts it. It might not impact the content very much. It might just be a matter of we have to shift content to within the new framework of the order that they want to receive them in, because apparently this new order is going to make it much easier for ministry staff to review documents that come to them for their approval, including the use apparently of, so I'm told, of AI, that a standardized format helps with the use of AI for such things. So stay tuned. We're all living the same learning curve right now, but I appreciate the request for the summary, and I will see what I can do to find something or put something together.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that. Jim, you had a question?
Yeah, first, I just want to thank staff for the work putting this together. And it was a difficult read. I think I've been through it 3 times and I might know a little bit of it now, but I'm going to have to keep this and refer to it from time to time, but it's going to change again likely, right? But thanks for doing it. I won't try to digest it all yet today.
Just one quick question, that I got the impression that there might be a little bit less protection for environment consideration under this new bill. Am I wrong on that?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not necessarily sure if it's less protection for, say, the traditional environmental protection areas and natural heritage resources. What I got from this is that anything related to do with policies for climate change, climate resiliency, environmental or electrical vehicles, those kinds of sustainability features are no longer required as parts of official plans. So, I mean, does that mean we can't have them? No, but it just means there's a lessening of a municipality's ability to be able to require a developer to do those things. They're trying to remove perceived barriers to development. So for instance, you know, Toronto can no longer have their green roof bylaw that requires, you know, green roofs on new high density buildings. So they're removing those things because of apparent costs associated with it, which is ideally supposed to lower the cost of the units. But I don't see there being any reason that we have to change policies that we have, for instance, for lake protection, shoreline protection, and those kinds of things. It's more related to the broader, more nebulous climate change and other sustainability type items that are related to development.
Good to hear in that, because when we have 254 kilometers of shoreline and acres and acres that get washed away during the high water season, that it was worrisome to think that we would lose any control or consideration, because next there'll be the liability of, I didn't know I was going to get flooded out. Well, that's because you built within the wave action area, and yeah, you're going to get flooded out. So good to hear. Thank you very much. Thank you for the report. I think we've come to communications. I don't see anything listed. Okay. Any other business? Anybody have any other business? Okay, our next meeting will be, we will have one in July.
I don't remember the exact date, Madam Chair, but I believe it is in September.
Okay, so we'll get that updated, and that sometime in September
24th, apparently.
24th, September 24th. And so pre-election time, it'd be a busy time. And lots of these decisions we're talking about today, and that will come to the next council, which will be fine. Now, can I have motion to adjourn? Okay, by Leona and seconded by Betty. All those in favor? Adjourned at 11:29. Okay. Thank you very much.